Today, we're going to walk through the process of building this paramotor helmet, starting with nothing more than an ordinary skateboard helmet. All of the components necessary to build this helmet can be purchased for less than $200. A link to the parts I used will be in the description below. Now let's head over to the shop and jump right in. The 3M Paramotor earmuff that we're going to use in this build has a thick ear pocket. We'll need to clearance the pocket of the helmet to accommodate the thickness of the earmuff. Using a square set to 1 inch to provide us a little bit of extra wiggle room once installed, we'll use a pencil to mark the top boundary of where your cut will be. Flip the helmet over and make a matching mark on the other side. Using a 3.5 inch hole saw, line up the top of the hole saw with the pencil mark made earlier. Make sure to center the hole saw in between the factory rivets so that there's enough material left to maintain structural integrity. Stencil around the outside of the hole saw with a pencil so that you'll have a visual indicator of where to make your cut later. Since you will be cutting completely through this helmet around the ear pocket, we want to make sure not to damage anything on the inside, such as this Velcro dot that holds the liner in. Go ahead and remove this now and set it aside for later. Next, using a small screwdriver, pry up the edge of the rubber trim surrounding the ear pocket. In all reality, the saw could cut right through this, but because it's made of rubber, it probably won't make as nice of a cut. So go ahead and just pull this back now, and we'll deal with it later. Now, we're ready to cut the holes. Here, I've clamped the helmet vertically to hold it steady while making the cut. Because we're not using a centering bit on this hole saw, be sure to make a very slow, controlled cut to minimize vibration and walking. Though I've chosen to use a hole saw and a drill press to make my cut, if you do not have a drill press and have access to other cutting utensils such as a Dremel, that will work just as well. Here's what the rough cut looks like. The rubber here still intact. Make a matching cut on the other side. Again, being slow and precise, and taking your time to make the cut. With both ear pockets now cut, take some time to clean up the cuts, removing any burrs from around the ears. Use the razor knife to bevel the inside edge of the foam. Doing this will prevent the edge from flaking or peeling. Now, using a sharp razor, we can cut off the excess rubber trim that we held out of the way during the cut. Using this razor knife is going to make a much nicer cut that blends into the original shape of the ear pocket. Use the file to make a smooth, rounded transition from the original helmet shape into the new ear pocket that you've created. Using contact cement, resecure any loose edges of the existing rubber trim. With the cutouts complete, we can now reinstall the headliner Velcro inside the helmet. Next, use a pencil to trace the outline of the ear cutout on the inner headliner. Next, remove the headliner and use a pair of scissors to cut along your trace line. This will allow the profile of the headliner to match up with the new ear cutouts. Now we're ready to begin working with the earmuffs. These earmuffs are intended to be used on a hard hat, and they clip in using this swivel. We're going to be removing this back swivel and mounting them a different way. To do so, we'll have to remove this Phillips screw here. With the screw removed, the two pieces just simply pull apart. Next, hold the earmuff in the helmet pocket to determine the best angle for mounting. I've found just a slight angle to be the most comfortable. The hardware to attach the earmuffs can be found at the local hardware store. I've chosen to use these 1/4 inch aluminum screw posts, 3/8 inches long, along with some aluminum spacers that will fit snugly inside the earmuff bracket. These spacers with a 5/16 of an inch outside diameter fit perfectly inside the pivot of the bracket. Choosing the appropriately sized drill bit that matches our screw post hardware. Using this bit, drill the earmuff mounting hole in the location previously selected. Make sure to drill all the way through the helmet. Next, select a drill bit slightly larger than the head of the screw post. Bit will be used to remove the foam down to the outer shell so that the screw post can be used to securely fasten the earmuffs to the helmet's outer shell. In order to make the spacer slip over the screw post, it must be slightly drilled out. Though it's a little unconventional to do so, because this piece is made of aluminum and is so soft, you can actually run the drill in reverse to avoid the drill bit from catching and marring your workpiece. With the spacer drilled out, it now slides nicely over the screw post. The spacer and the screw post can now be test fitted inside of the earmuff bracket. With that complete, the earmuffs can now be mounted to the helmet. With the hardware in place, the screw post can now be tightened. With this side done, now we repeat on the other side. With both earmuffs in place, we can now focus our attention on mounting the Senna Bluetooth. For this build, I have chosen to mount this on the right side of my helmet because I use a left-handed throttle and want easy access to manipulate my headset when in flight. To begin, first start by identifying the mounting location on the helmet. In this particular case, I've chosen to mount it on the front to avoid from accidentally hitting it while in flight. Using a razor knife, cut a small relief in the rubber trim around the front of the helmet. Using a small screwdriver, carve a relief into the polystyrene foam just large enough to accommodate the mounting bracket. Once the bracket fits nicely down inside the helmet's shell, we can go ahead and mount that bracket to the headset itself. With the mounting bracket just snug, the headset can now be firmly pressed down in place. Positioned, the screws can be tightened the rest of the way. Next, remove the earmuffs from their attachments. Then, remove the pad and inner ring. Using your cutting tool of choice, create a small notch in the outer cup to accommodate the speaker wire. Reassemble the halves of the earmuff and use the notch to index your drill bit to drill a symmetrical hole all the way through to the inside of the ear cup. The drill bit should not be much larger than the original notch. Drilling a hole creates a smooth, uniform penetration for the wire to pass through. Once again, pry apart the earmuff and find the inner ring with the newly drilled hole. This will need to be notched to allow the wire to pass through. The speaker can be installed on either the top side or the bottom side of the foam insert. Here, I'm demonstrating an installation with the speaker underneath the foam. Whether you choose to install your speaker on the top or the bottom side, any spare wire not used should be pulled back inside the ear cup and stored underneath the foam. This will allow for a much cleaner installation and better wire management later. Finish by reinstalling the ear cup. In order to route the wires from the outside of the helmet where the Bluetooth is mounted to the inside of the helmet, a small notch is going to be cut in the helmet's exterior foam just above the front-facing vent. With the foam now cut, wires can be individually pulled through the opening into the vent, where they can then be pulled inside the helmet and routed accordingly. Using some contact cement, we'll glue either side of our cut back together, followed by a coat to readhere the rubber trim. Once the rubber trim is back in place, the original cut will be unnoticeable. Next, we'll install the boom microphone using either the supplied Velcro pad, as shown here, or double-sided foam tape for a more permanent, robust installation. With the mic now in place, we can begin routing all of the wires inside the helmet. To make clean routing paths for the wires inside the helmet, I've chosen to use a hot screwdriver to melt small channels in the polystyrene foam. Slowly and carefully draw out the channels, maintaining a consistent depth as you travel. It is very easy to overdo it here. If you have a soldering iron or a wood burner, that would work just as well. With the channels now defined, you can begin using a small flat tip screwdriver to press the wires down into the channel where they belong. As you work the wires in place, make sure that the wire is countersunk below the level of the foam. Once installed, we'll apply a small bead of hot glue over the top of the trenches to hold the wires in place. Here, the wire path for the left speaker is shown with the wire installed in the trench, ready for hot glue. With a hot glue gun, now apply just enough hot glue to cover the wire and fill the trench back flush with the original height of the foam. With both speaker wires now complete, it is time to create a recessed channel for the microphone connector to slip into. With the connector installed, it too will be held in place with a dab of hot glue. Using the cut-off corners from the headliner that we removed earlier when cutting the ear pockets, we will fit them and reuse them on the inside of the helmet for additional comfort. A few small pieces of Velcro will work just fine to hold them in place. You can choose to install your pads wherever you'd like, or not install them at all. In my case, I've found them to be most comfortable right on the top of my head, and a little bit of padding goes a long way. Finally, you can step back and enjoy your new Paramotor helmet. Bluetooth communications, adjustable earmuffs, boom mic that can be easily moved out of the way or pulled down when needed, and a beautiful fit and finish. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, like and subscribe here for future videos.